Thank you so much, Tara, for being with us today on the Magic of Cozy's podcast. Can you tell us about your journey into writing magical cozy mysteries?
Sure. Thank you for having me. I actually had written romance for many years, and I never imagined that I could or would write anything other than contemporary stories. I always said, "Oh, I'm very rooted in the present. I'm very rooted in the modern, and I just can't. I don't have the imagination for it." And then one day in 2022, I was with my family, and we were visiting a little like a gold rush town in California. It's called Folsom. It's this little tiny, very cute, quaint town, sort of old west. And we went into this hotel actually um, that turned into a bar, but it was this old historic gold rush hotel. And I just got this overwhelming feeling of like, what if this were a cozy mystery? What if this were a setting for a cozy mystery involving a ghost? And I had written some cozies at that point. I had transitioned from romance to cozy mysteries, but my cozy mysteries had all at that point had all been contemporary. I had a coffee series and a series about a gator trapper. And so then I thought, what if, I had a hotel as a setting and my mind just started to spin and we as writers we get a lot of ideas obviously. And so I just sort of shelved it and then but I kept looking at the photos that I took and I kept talking to my mom and dad about it. And I couldn't get away from it. I couldn't get away from what I saw and the feeling I had when I was there. So a year later, I decided to start writing and I just wrote. I just created the world. And it actually is the best selling thing that I've written. And it resonates with me more than anything that I imagined.
It is a great series. I am
Thank
loving
you.
it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So, what I think you talked about this a little bit, but what inspired you to blend the elements of a cozy mystery, a story with supernatural themes?
The other piece of it is that there's a real life town in Florida called Casadega, and that's known as the psychic capital of the world. And it's a place where there's a lot of psychics and mediums and things like that. So I kind of took that as an idea and went and I was thinking that I wanted the series to be sort of paranormal light in meaning that somebody who doesn't normally read paranormal would be able to get into it, sort of like me, kind of a beginner to it. I wanted it to be an accessible series for people who have never read paranormal, had never read paranormal cozies, and who wanted to go on a journey with somebody who didn't really believe in sort of paranormal, mystical, holistic things and travel along with the main character as she comes to believe.
So, how do you approach world building in your magical cozy mystery series and make it believable? You said it's based on a real town, but what other elements did you include in your world building?
Well, all of my cozy mysteries, contemporary and paranormal, are all based in Florida where I live. And so obviously, Florida is this kind of unique place for a whole bunch of reasons. The flora, the fauna, the strangeness, Florida man, the weather, just the general weirdness of Florida. So, right there, I wanted to incorporate all of those things and then add sort of a layer of a town where many people had some sort of paranormal or extranormal abilities. So it's really rooted in the real world and things like headlines and details about the alligators and the mangroves and the cypress trees. Those are all real. All of those things are real. Florida's kind of a magical place to begin with in this very odd way. I think that people think it's all just, Florida man and it's all crazy. And it is to some extent. But it's also, the flora and the fauna and the tropical foliage, you can be somewhere in Florida and see a tree that's like got leaves as big as a sheet, and just everything is sort of, I think that, and I have a lot of friends from the North who will come and visit me, and they're always so blown away by how green and lush and sort of otherworldly it looks compared to other places. Probably Southern California is similar. I mean, I'm sure I know it is similar. But very much Florida is a very much a wild place, and I wanted to convey that. So that goes a lot into my world building in all of my books, actually, but especially these.
Yeah, it's such a tropical location and so different, I think, for the United
Yes,
States. I
yes,
mean, every region it has its own um, uniqueness, but Florida is definitely, like you said, like a little unworldly. It's not what you expect in the United
right.
States. You expect it on like a Caribbean island or something more exotic.
Exactly. And there's such weird things. I mean, I live in a pretty urban area of Florida. I live in a really densely populated city. So, but even so, I don't have to go far to see an alligator. I don't have to go far. I walk out my back porch and I see, lizards and giant bugs and I mean really giant bugs. And so I think that just adds to the realism of it, and also it is magical. And the idea, I also think that there a lot of people, maybe not a lot, but I think we automatically assume witches, Salem, New England, cozy New England towns, and the idea that there would be witches and people with abilities here in Florida, it makes sense to me. So that's why I wrote it.
Yeah, for sure. So, what advice would you give to aspiring authors who are interested in writing supernatural or magic cozy mysteries?
I would say, first off, to really study what resonates with them, because I suspect that some people are really into the more urban fantasy or romantasy side of things, and I'm not. That's very much not me. Although I shouldn't discount it, because I should never say never, because I
Mhm.
once said I would never write paranormal, and here I am. But I would say whatever resonates with you, whatever books, movies, TV shows. I'm also very. I've always been. It's interesting because I say that I'm not. I would never write something. I said I would never write something like this. But the reality is, the things that I've loved in the past are things like The X Files, or things like Alfred Hitchcock's Presents. Sort of that whole mm, mystical crime solving. I think the X Files, personally, I think the X Files, my husband and I have been doing a rewatch of the X Files, and sort of capturing that um, line between the real and the not real. And so I think that anything that you can do, whatever resonates with you, to really draw inspiration from that, that's usually what I would do. Obviously, read a lot, and just try it. Just try it. I didn't think. I guess I was not sure that I could do the world building over a series, and now I'm like, okay, it's going to be at least 20 books, and I've got this whole idea planned. But I think just going with your gut sometimes works better than anything in many ways.
So, shifting gears a little bit to a little more fun questions, what is your definition of magic?
Oh, that's a very interesting question. My definition of magic is what is possible. What is possible, and what is I- I- so I think that my definition of magic now would be very different than what would have been like 10 years ago. To me, magic is something that's a really hard question. Um, you know, I think that it's something that is possible and yet extra, something that's possible and yet rises above the everyday. And so that can be as varied as something serendipitous, that we are thinking of a person and then we hear a song on the radio that we associate with that person. There can be everyday magic like that. And then, of course, there's the hocus pocus kind of magic. Interestingly, personally, I don't know if I believe in the hocus pocus kind of magic. I grew up a lot. I grew up in Northern California and Vermont. So I'm well versed in a lot of new age stuff. And that's sort of my default and go to that. It's sort of, that's what I think of. But I'm not sure that I believe it. But I think that magic also comes with a measure of kindness because it's so rare in this world. To me, magic would be like there are many things that could be very magical in this world because they're not as common. And that would be, um, that would be like bodily autonomy for women and being kind to all people and equity and justice. Like to me, that's the real magic because it's almost so rare in this world. So to me, magic is something that's rare, and maybe something that should be happening, but it's rare,
Yeah,
if that makes
for
sense.
sure. Yes, it does. If you could have a magical power or ability, what would it be and why?
Ooh, I thought about this when I was creating. So my main character, Amelia, she has psychometry. She can touch objects and glean emotions and visions from objects. That would be a fun one, but it could get a little annoying because what if you touched everything and had it would be like a radio playing in your head. And I sort of describe that in the books. I think being invisible would be really cool. However, I think that as a middle aged woman, I think I have, and this sort of plays into the books a lot. Um, there is a magic about midlife and being a midlife woman because you do become invisible. I mean, that's sort of the reality is like you're no longer desired by men. So in the eyes of society, you are nothing. And there is this kind of magic in just moving through the world, being invisible. Like part of me at a certain point, maybe 5 years ago when I was still in my 40s, it made me kind of sad. Like I wasn't desired the way that I used to be. And now it's like I can sort of move through the world unnoticed. And there's a magic about that I absolutely love. So being invisible, I think being truly invisible would be a cool magic.
Very cool. Well, I'm in my 40s now, so we'll,
You've
we'll
got
see
time.
where the future holds. So, what is your favorite way to get cozy with a book?
I know that a lot of people, I see all these beautiful TikToks of people, in the fall and it's autumn and there's leaves and it's crisp outside. And in Florida, I'm still sweating over here in October. My favorite way to get cozy is just to get in my chair with a cold beverage, usually a kombucha or an iced tea, and just to read curled up with my dog near me and just sit in my chair. And there, I have a little, you can't see it, it's like a little ottoman, but it's fluffy and white. And, if I crank the air conditioner down, then I can put on my fuzzy socks and feel really cozy. So that's usually it. That's usually it.
I'm in Arizona, so I
Oh,
understand the feeling
yeah,
of never
right.
having that crisp fall,
Yes,
perfect reading weather.
exactly. Exactly. Sometimes I will go out on my porch. Like if it's the perfect temperature, if it's not too humid and the bugs aren't out, I will go out and, sit under the palm tree. And that's really nice. But that's a very small slice of weather there.
Yeah. So, what are you reading right now? Do you have any book recommendations for our listeners?
What I'm not reading, usually when I'm writing, I'm about to work on a novella, so I usually don't read in the genre that I'm writing. So actually, I'm listening to. I've been listening to a lot of Lisa Kleypas. I don't know if you know her.
Mhm.
She's a historical romance author. I kind of got into like Bridgerton and the Gilded Age, and so I've been really hardcore into historical romance this summer. Lisa, if you love like sort of moderately spicy historical romance that has a lot of humor and wit, she's just a brilliant writer. So I've been listening to Lisa Kleypas all summer. Suddenly You is amazing. It's how a romance should be done. It's a beautiful, beautiful romance.
Oh, that's great. I'll have to definitely check that out.
Yeah, she's
I'm
really
just
good.
now getting into romance a little bit.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah. So, do you have any new projects that you would like to share or promote?
Sure. Well, I have a bunch of things coming out, but the thing I'd like to tell you about is I'm going to have so the way I've set up the Crescent Moon Mysteries is I I didn't mention this, but prior to writing Cozy Mysteries and actually during some of the time. I was a serial fiction writer. I wrote serial fiction for money. I wrote serial romance. So these long, extended romances. And so I think in terms of seasons, like a TV show. I don't think in terms of like an entire arc of a book series. So the Crescent Moon Mystery Series will be in seasons. So books 1 through 4 is one season. So there will be three novels and a novella, and then there will be 3 more novels and a novella. So I just finished the novella of the first season, Catitude and Charms, and that comes out in September. And then for Thanksgiving, I'll be doing a spin-off novella about a character in the series, and that is actually set in Vermont. I spent a lot of time in Vermont, went to high school there. So I am going to be writing the classic cozy in New England in the fall. And it will be about a magic town in Vermont called Hemlock Hollow. And it will be, I intend to have a spin-off series. So that will be the first novella in the spin-off series of that. And that will come
Awesome.
out in November. And that's called Maple, Sugar, and Magic.
Oh, I'm excited
And
for that.
and there may be a little bit more romantic elements in that. There will be kind of a second chance thread with that,
Mm.
and it will be about a midlife protagonist, and she returns to her hometown. She goes home again, and it's really a lot about going home and accepting your past.
I love it. I can't wait. And how can our listeners find you?
Taralush.com, TARALUSH.com. I'm also on Instagram as The Book Lush, and on TikTok, I'm Crescent Moon Mysteries.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Tara, for being here today and sharing about your series and magic and all the things.
Great. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.